Welcome everybody to Breaking Silos Across Disciplines to Leverage Data Science and Solve Business Problems. I'm your moderator today, and we have this incredible panel of professionals from the Informs Analytics Society board, and we'll go through introductions in just a second. We have a set of structured questions which we'll run through for your enjoyment and learning. And then thirdly, we'll take questions and answers. Now, we have a relatively smallish group here today. We're very thankful that you guys have decided to join us. So if you would like, feel free to turn your camera on. And if the panelists are okay with it, you can also ask questions during our discussion. You don't have to wait until the end specifically. All right. So let me go ahead and do a quick share screen and we can introduce our panelists. Okay, so we'll start off with some quick introductions. So EC, you're first on the page. Can you give us a quick introduction, please, Sam?
Definitely. Hello, everyone. My name is Ece İzgi. I'm part of the partner organization in AWS, and I lead the data and analytics solution architecture efforts in our partnerships with global consulting partners. Over to you, Bev.
Thank you, thank you. Harrison, can you do a quick introduction?
Gladly. So I'm Harrison Schramm. I'm the immediate past president of the Analytics Society of Informs. I've been working on a variety of problems for off and on for the last 20 years in industry and academia and also government.
Fantastic, thank you. And you're the immediate past chair of the Analytics Society.
Yes.
So wonderful. And then Jen, can you say hello, please?
Hi, I'm Jen Luik. I am currently the secretary for the Analytics Society, and I work for the Department of Homeland Security, Chief Data Officer, really working on data quality and data governance problems. Just to note that everything I say here are my own opinions, and they do not reflect the government, the federal government or DHS. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And I usually give that caveat right about now. So that's applicable to all of our panelists today. These are their thoughts alone and don't necessarily reflect their companies or organizations. So thank you again for joining us. We're talking today about breaking these silos across disciplines. And so I want to start off by just talking about what do we mean by a silo? Like when I think about a silo, especially in the agricultural, and being a vegan, it's kind of tricky because I wish there weren't any silos. But what do we mean by a silo within an organizational context? What does that even mean?
So Beverly, are you going to call on us, or do you want us to just start talking?
No, just go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start talking. I'll add to Jen's disclaimer that I'm not even sure, given the time of day, that my opinions are even my own and shouldn't be followed or listened to by anyone. So, so having said that, you know, organizations tend to be tribal and tend to be protective. And it's been my experience that those protections spill over into analytics. There are powerful disincentives for organizations to and Beverly, you're presenting to everyone right now. There's powerful disincentives inside organizations to share data. So it's really important to realize that the key stakeholders for us are ultimately someone who's going to take the work that we do and do something with it. That stakeholder is almost never someone from our own profession. It's been my experience that the world is mostly run by English majors. And so we need to recognize the silos before we can try to break them. And then we also need to just be understanding that the people that we're going to influence do not automatically speak our language.
I'd also like to add that, you know, some silos, you can kind of see some demarcation along the lines of, you know, a group that's controlling resources, information, or, you know, or money. And they tend to, you know, just like Harrison said, they tend to want to protect what it is that they have. So you'll start to see some boundaries prop up, just to protect whatever it is that they're protecting. And sometimes they'll, if the models or, the metrics are in their favor, great. If not, they could be a little bit more protective of it. And then that kind of, could influence how they utilize you as a data scientist or, an analytics professional. Just understanding who your stakeholders are and how they're using it, in the context of their organization, but as well as, their organization within like an ecosystem of organizations, is also really important.
Okay. So far I'm hearing, and even if you didn't specifically say these terms, the word salad that I'm creating based on what I'm hearing is a silo is often affiliated with terms like walls, a kingdom, control, power, and y'all didn't really say it, but almost like a tribe or a group of people that are the same kind of discipline or the same, they're focused on like accounting, then they might be the accounting tribe. And they're not, it almost seems, the silo is something of an exclusive club.
Yeah, and it looks like the main reason would be really a lack of organization-wide data culture, right? The governance of data, treating the data as an organizational asset, right? Defining that data ownership and consumption patterns as well. On the ownership side is data is created, procured, onboarded by one line of business, and it stays in that line of business. It's not shared with business units. It's not enriched by other business units. And that really ends up being the reason why organizations don't have full visibility to their business dynamics. And on the consumption side, when we look at the business units, for example, marketing LOB is doing their own thing, right? Building their customer lifetime value models, but not talking to supply chain. So they don't factor in how a stock out in a retail store because of weather conditions can impact the customer propensity to repeat purchase, for example. Or supply chain LOB is building their, for example, inventory optimization models, but don't have the same KPIs with the manufacturing. So they both focus on different goals, different annual goals or different metrics that they capitalize on, and they operate as usual. And probably the linkage between these LOBs at the business strategy level do not reflect correctly to the data science level. As data science, we think of data as the foundational fabric for organizational success. Across business units, across business functions. And it's really a combination of, cognitive capability plus the technology toolkit, right, that supports that strategic direction of the organization is taking to solve business problems. And, at the organizational level, the stakeholders are really focused on definition of the business problem, designing the solution, piloting it, productionizing it, commercializing and consumerization of these solutions and making them ready for the market, right? And at the ecosystem level, just like Jan said, a wide spectrum of industries are there that have either experimental or professional level of data science practices. So there are so many topics to discuss, but probably that's because of the lack of data culture within the organization.
Okay. So we're seeing, it sounds like when we talk about silos, it's more about the differences. It's like we're looking at the difference between these groups, and it's, we hear the kingdom, the walls, the control, the power, the communication was mentioned, and the differences, and also that the data culture is not sort of stringing them together. So all in all, silos, I think it sounds like we agree, is not necessarily a good thing. So generally speaking, not necessarily a great way to operate a business. So let's talk about, because you started talking about this a little bit ECU, is who the key stakeholders. So when we think about the stakeholders, who are those stakeholders for data science? Which groups exist that we're trying to serve or that are somehow involved in what we do? And what do those silos look like for those stakeholders? I think someone mentioned marketing as an example, but what are some of the key stakeholders?
I can just continue where I left. And
Sure, yeah.
When I was saying, two layers probably at the organizational layer, it's the data. So at the organizational level, what I was trying to tie is, yes, there are business LOBs. Sometimes if the organization is data science capable or data literate, or they are trying to break those capability chains, I would say, they sometimes have that CDAO practices, like Chief Data Analytics Office practices, or sometimes those practices are under IT, and sometimes business. So they are still trying to figure out, but from a stakeholder perspective, the data science, as we see it as a collection of activities that produces a product, like a solution, or an intelligence that is being embedded into a product or service that the company is going to market with. It's definitely the stakeholders within the company would be, business LOBs, the IT departments, the data science teams. Within these technical teams, of course, data engineers, developers, information architects, integration architects, enterprise architects, and at the ecosystem level, when we are ready to go to market with that product or solution, it's definitely 3 layers. So the low layer is consumers or customers, whichever industry, patients, students, maybe if it's education. At the very upstream level, it's suppliers and business partners who contribute to that creation of the product to make it market ready. So I'll stop here and would like to hear more ideas on that.
Okay, just to recap, some of the internal stakeholders that you mentioned were the lines of business, the business units, IT, the data teams, and then more specifically, data engineering, development, architecture, integration specialist. And so that was kind of the internal layer of stakeholders that may all have their own kingdoms and silos. And then there's the broader kind of market, which is the consumers, the providers, and those kinds of people that are out in the broader area. Anything you guys want to add, Jen or Harrison, to that list of stakeholders? That's a lot of silos.
So I'll jump in here and say a couple of things. I think that instead of trying to enumerate who all the stakeholders might be, I would say that when we do analytic work, we're doing it for 2 major groups, and those 2 groups actually have very disparate incentives. We're first and foremost, and this is a trap that we can fall into, we're doing this work for ourselves and for people like us. We want to go to conferences, Informed Analytics conferences in only a couple of weeks. There was my shameless plug, and present our work and talk at a very technical language about tools, techniques, data sizes, stuff like that. But ultimately, most of the people, so that's the technical side. But on the practical side, we're not doing this just to do it. We're doing it to make something better, make something more profitable, make something more efficient. And the people who are the end recipients of the work that we do don't particularly care how we did it. They just care how what we've done makes their job easier or makes their job harder. Now the thing that has to be overcome is that generally, if you're going to implement a new system or implement a new process, you have to get over a hump of the transition, and then you can start seeing the efficiency. And it is so hard to get folks who are just trying to get through their workday to say, now I've got to submit this other kind of report that's going to add 10 minutes to my day, and not make them realize that on the backside, once it's implemented and successful, you're going to save an hour off their day. So the importance and the credibility you get from achieving a quick win cannot be overstated. So if you're trying to implement organizational change, go for a quick win.
Sounds like the summary of what you said is that we present or we develop data science products for ourselves and others, and really it gets down to those two layers. Is that right?
I think I said a little bit more than that, but at a first blush, yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. And when we are doing so, it's usually to improve the way we operate, either improve revenue or reduce costs, make us more efficient. Okay. And what were you going to say, Jen?
Oh, I mean, just to add, add to all of the above, there's, I like to see stakeholders as kind of like two different flavors, right? You've got stakeholders that are in a position of authority, and then you also have stakeholders in a position of influence. And so just like what Harrison mentioned, right, we're usually doing things to improve, improve a product, to make life better for, for somebody, and that involves change. And so from a change management perspective, right, if you're looking at, if you consider some of your key stakeholders that have authority to affect change, and then you have stakeholders that have the ability to influence change, who may or may not be in official capacity, right? They could be just a very influential silo that is not, in the org chart, but they definitely exist and definitely have influence over whether or not, your project sees the light of day. So those are some key stakeholders that, that I tend to look for and to kind of, I guess, market to and manage expectations with when working on a project.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, that it's not always something official, that it could even be something unofficial or some level of influence. It kind of counters what you're trying to do and makes it difficult to get your work implemented. Very good points. So how do these silos begin? I mean, are they naturally already there and we have to break them, or is there a way to to make it so that they never did exist from the beginning? And what are some of the problems that happen, without going into a lot of detail or divulging too much, but how do these silos begin with these stakeholders, and what kind of challenges come from the existence of a silo?
So I think that's something that we have to be always mindful of if we're doing this work, particularly if we're facing folks in the policy realm, which is where I've spent a fair amount of my career, is that line managers and executives are sort of in a conundrum when it comes to our profession, because on the one hand, they want us. I mean, they want to be more efficient, and they need, either because competition factors tell them that they need us, or in the sense of a lot of government applications, they've been told to bring our skill sets in. But at the same time, they're fearful. And they're fearful of one very specific thing. They're fearful that we're going to start digging around in their schedules or in their data or in their processes. And they're fearful that we're going to discover that they are actually terrible managers and that they left millions of dollars on the table every year. So we need to be aware of that when we start our engagements. We need to come in on kitten paws. And a great way to lose work, if you're working as an independent consultant, is to walk into a room and look around and say, if you hire me for a year, I'm going to guarantee you a 30% revenue lift. That might actually be true, but you should temper that. Because if you tell someone that you're going to be able to increase their revenue by 5 or 7%, what you're telling them is you're going to be their partner and you're going to work with them and you're going to help them get better. If you walk in and your opening bid is to tell them that you're going to increase their capability by 30%, you're telling them that you think they're a terrible manager and they should have been fired already. So we need to, in the next epoch of our journey as a profession, trying to make the world a better place, we need to be very mindful of the messages behind the messages that we say when we talk to people from outside our profession.
Okay, thank you, Harrison. So I like the analogy of the kitten paws that I think we need to have. It sounds like you're saying, I think we need to have some empathy for where the stakeholders are coming from, that they may feel, I don't want to use the term threatened, but maybe a little fearful that something's going to be divulged, because the data, I mean, you could twist and turn things, of course, not that you should, but generally speaking, data doesn't lie. And sometimes people don't want the full truth coming out. So we have to, as data scientists, we're truth seekers, and we're just trying to find the truth. But from their perspective, they may not see it that way. They may see it as a little bit of intimidation. Is that what you're saying?
So I think threatened is actually a completely appropriate word to use here.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and I think that you know, it's not that anyone is lying per se, right? But it can certainly be that someone who's in charge of one part of the process, they're going to apply a measure of performance. So they're going to care a lot about how their little piece of the puzzle performs. But evaluating something with a measure of performance is very different than measuring it against a measure of effectiveness, which is how that piece contributes to the overall success of the enterprise. So it's different incentives. It's not about truth or lying.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything to add about the challenges that happen from the silos that we stand up?
So I've seen some pretty interesting things with regards to the size of the organization that you're working with, right? Smaller companies or smaller organizations, they tend to be a little flat, and everybody is kind of in the know of everything, and everybody has some influence over decisions and resources. And so usually you don't see as many silos in a small organization, because really it's kind of too small. Especially with a young organization, right? One that's only a few years old, that's just started, to get going. But when you're working with a large organization, or an organization that's been around for, almost a century, right? You'll really start to see some silos, because, essentially kingdoms have been built. People have made careers off of whatever it is that they're doing. And so when you come on to kind of deliver some data science solutions, if those solutions threaten kingdoms, that's a huge challenge, because while you're trying to do the right thing, right, in delivering some truth right through your work, it can come across as a threat for those who believe that they have a kingdom, or they've got some control, and they've had it for 10 plus years, right? So those are some things that, you really need to be mindful of. And, when you're interacting with them, having some empathy there in what it is that they really believe in, like it or not, that is their reality. And so if we want to affect change, right, we're going to have to meet them there and kind of work with them, to deliver solutions together.
And to add on this kind of transformation theme discussion, I think that's why we have the change management kind of practices and disciplines that needs to be factored in enterprise-wide transformations, right? Not to make people feel worried about their jobs and careers, etc., but making sure that they become cognizant of the impact of data science, AI, ML, etc., augments their day-to-day jobs, rather than reducing the need of their individual contributions. So I think that would help in terms of bringing LOBs together and building joint goals together across LOBs, across personas, starting from the top, like CXO level to the entry level, right? To very hands-on level, really defining the roles and responsibilities across the organization, around and against the data-driven solution building altogether. And this is also touching on kind of a product-centric approach when you're building the data science solutions, from research to development to productionizing and commercializing the entire effort and the entire solution or product or service.
Okay, I disappeared for a minute, but I'm back. It sounds like some of the solutions that we've heard so far, which that was our next question. What are some ways to reduce the silos? I've heard to have empathy for stakeholders, to develop joint solutions. There should never, I like the way my colleague Eric Schmidt put it, there should never be like a ta-da moment where you disappear as a data scientist, you disappear for 3 months and you come back and there's like, ta-da, look what we did. It should be more a partnership longer term along the way throughout the journey. So joint solution building for data science products. And what are some of the other ways that you would see to reduce the silos?
If I continue, I would definitely think of it as 2 layers again, at the organizational level and then at the ecosystem layer level. And in the ecosystem layer, I think partnerships are extremely important, not because I'm representing the partnerships group in my company, but it is where, it's the kitchen of how organizations actually work together and formulate strategies together to go to market, to sell, to deliver, and to keep the adoption live, right? Adoption of the data science and technology solutions live. So because no organization is really capable of existing alone. They all have their own small ecosystem that they operate in. The stakeholders that they are interacting are different, are unique. Their products and services are different. So that's why we have the partnerships to complement the capabilities of various other companies all together, so that they build together, they build joint solutions together and go to market to target the right consumers, customers, patients, whatever the end persona is. So that's the ecosystem layer. And at the organizational layer, just like I said, data culture, bringing a data culture, making everyone an innovator with the right data, with the right tools and technologies, etc., with the right goals and incentives, just like Harrison and Jen mentioned. That's how we will keep it live, and that's how it will stay sustainable.
Excellent. Okay, great. I've got some really good advice to share with everybody. I'm putting in the chat. Anything else you guys want to add, Harrison and Jen, before we talk about the future? Anything you want to add about ways to reduce or strategies? Yeah.
So I would just like to add that every client engagement that I've ever had has one common thread, and that is the problem that was brought to me was never the actual problem. The problem that was brought to me is the symptom of some other deeper underlying problem. So that's the first piece. And then the second piece is sort of the dual or the complement of that. And that is that the attributes of a solution that you think are interesting might be the least interesting thing to the user. And I will give you a specific example. I know someone who was doing some large scale inventory problem work, and they had built this large scale optimization. They'd done a lot of really cutting edge mathematics to optimize this problem. And as part of the solution that they gave them, so 85% of the work was this optimization engine. 15, maybe less, % of the work was to automatically generate the report that talked about how it was done. And the feedback from the client was, wow, we love this. We've been looking for a way to automatically generate this report for years. So that is a common that's a common sort of thing to happen, where the thing that our incentives, and this will get us into the future discussion, but we should open our hearts to the notion that our incentives do not match cleanly with what our clients' incentives are. And so if the thing that we thought was awesome isn't the thing that the client thought was awesome, but the client thought something was awesome, then we should still register that as a win.
Okay, I see. So two things I heard were I call that the why, Harrison. I've written stuff on it. You can find it on LinkedIn. I have a class about it, but it has to do with problem framing and understanding the why behind the why, like the real reason why the work is being requested. So understanding the real, kind of why behind the work is part of the ways to break down and reduce the silos. And then the second thing you mentioned is the attributes of a data science solution data scientists think are interesting are usually different from the attributes that stakeholders find interesting or useful. So there's that language barrier of sorts where we have to kind of meet in the middle, or try to have that bridge between the two, if you will. Good point. Anything to add, Jen, before we move to the future?
The one thing that I would like to add is to kind of address, some of the issues that Harrison has come across. I like when I kick off a project, I love using agile playbooks and design facilitation and systems thinking to kind of flesh out some of those objectives and those ways of thinking that non-data science people on your team are thinking of or care about. And those games are kind of fun, and it kind of brings everybody together to kind of coalesce around the one, goal that we want to achieve. And I think that once you have that one goal and you have agreement on that goal, right, then we all can deliver a solution together. And that's kind of one way to kind of break the silos is to really coalesce around that one goal and have agreement on it. And sometimes you don't have agreement on it, and that's okay. Sometimes the teams, the stakeholders may say, this is not for me. And we part ways, and it's okay because we have an agreement on the goal.
Love it. Love it. This is a great top 10 of how to reduce silos and produce more effective data science products. I love it. Our last question for our panel is, what do you see for the future of data science to have more open, collaborative, these reduced silos? Like, do you see this getting better? Do you see it getting worse? Do you see other paths that are making it different in some ways? Like, what do you see for the projection with regards to silos?
I'm definitely optimistic, but it doesn't have a recipe, right? For the traditional industries, for the traditional organizations, enterprises, the recipe may be different than the digital natives, right? Or the smaller companies who are extremely agile and quickly respond to change, etc. But as we see data science as a practice, like as a cognitive set of activities, like it's not a plugin, not a project, not a 1 or 2 years of CDO or CDAO initiative. Right? It's here to stay. And as we think about the impact, right, it's always about augmenting the organizational skills for speeds, for precision, for resiliency, for responsiveness, as we are focused on creating those outcomes. And as I said before, marry that with change management so that the organization really becomes a more cognitive, more data literate and innovator at the core. I think it will bring the organization that capability to survive and thrive in both today's and tomorrow's ecosystems. And talking about ecosystems, right? just like I said before, no company can exist alone. Everybody is trying to find their own niche where they perform best at. And at this point, bringing in concepts like open innovation, right, into the business models is extremely important. I read in one of the reports recently that no business model, every business model will be unrecognizable in the next 10 years. So this is a very important estimation or prediction. So it means we have to prepare for the future, and to be able to prepare for the future, we have to recalibrate our operating models accordingly, according to the upcoming changes, according to the disruptions that we foresee, etc. And that needs to bring the business LOBs and technical teams, etc., all together, so that the solutions that they go to market with have a stamp of everybody. We also with that.
Stacey, can you say that quote again? That's really interesting about the 10 years.
Yes. So in the next 10 years, all the business models will be unrecognizable based on a report that was just released. So that means that every business has to take their, take it very seriously to be able to develop that resiliency, that responsiveness to some of the disruptions that are upcoming. So that is only possible if you are technically able, and if you are if you have strong interlocks with your ecosystem players as well, both internally and externally. Because every solution that you go to market with, I think, has to carry everyone's stamp on it, internal personas and external personas, so that we also know how to get more agile over time, and kind of don't get into that POC pilot paralysis, right? Every company is right now struggling with.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I like your optimism as well as your vision for the future, and that quote is very interesting. Jen Harrison, anything about your vision for the future? Harrison, I feel like yours is not going to be so optimistic.
Jen, do you want to go first, or?
Sure, I can go first this time. So I think what we're going to see in the future is an improvement in data literacy, right? I think like my 4-year-old is already working on coding challenges in his PBS Kids games app. Like, I was floored. Like, and he actually knows he actually understands how to move data through a pipe. And, that's something that I didn't know when I was 4. And that's what our children are learning today. So as as time goes on, right, and new generations enter the workforce, if this is what's being taught now to young children, I foresee, a generation of data literate people that, as EC mentioned, that the business models will change, because with data literate people, they will now start to see data as an asset, right? And will start to manage it accordingly, and will do business accordingly. So, today that may or may not be the case, because we've got mixed generations here. Some are more data literate than others, but in the future, I think we're going to see that change, and that will drastically change, how we do business, and then, also create, jobs and roles that we can't even imagine today. So there'll be more data science or analytic roles that will exist that we're not even talking to school for today.
This meeting is being recorded.
Got it. So a couple of things I heard: we'll have more data science natives. I mean, 4th graders are building models. They understand coding. My 15-year-old step twins know Python already. So we're going to start seeing more of that. Second thing I heard is data literacy will increase. And I sort of think about it in parallel to typing. I know I'm like majorly aging myself, and I just had a birthday and everything, but without giving a number, AARP is calling. But anyway, without giving any specific number, I had to take a typing class in high school. A typing class. Can you imagine? And I sort of see data literacy, you know, today and in the future, it's like, it's just going to be a given. It's not, you know, it's just sort of, that's part of it. So that's the second thing I heard was data literacy increase. And then the third thing, which is super important, is that data will not be viewed as just a bunch of digits floating under the drop floor. It's a real asset for the company. It's a strategic advantage, and it can be leveraged for lots of great insights and different things like in solutions and capabilities. So data being seen as an asset. Those are three really wonderful things about the future.
So I guess I don't think my views are going to be pessimistic, Beverly, but I'll let you grade my homework. So I've got two things I'd like to say, and neither of them are technical. The first one is, you know, I was walking through the grocery store last night, and they've got all the Easter candy out. And so I would liken our future to those Marshmallow Peeps. It's bright and soft, and it's bright in the sense that it's big, but soft in the sense that our ability, I think that if you look across a number of the economy, the businesses where the incentives were already aligned for us as operations research professionals to have an impact are nearing saturation. And I think that part of the side effect, we know that they're reaching saturation because of the massive layoffs across our sector. Now, as far as the data from that is going, the people who have been in that turmoil have almost without exception landed on their feet. But we're seeing that as a symptom, not of post-pandemic, but that we've reached near saturation in the places where it was natural for us. But the places where it's natural for us to be fully employed only represent about 15 or 20% of the economy. So that leaves like 80% on the table of things that we can go after. But in order to go after, back to your silos comment, we have to come in on kitten paws, be willing to speak the language, look the part, and be focused on solutions. So that's number one. Number two about the future, and it was alluded to in everyone else's comments, is that yes, you can certainly talk to kids who are 15 years old and are writing JavaScript. I work East Coast hours, but I live in California, which means in the afternoons, I go help coach the local robotics team. And they've got, you know, all sorts of computer vision and you know, writing Java code to make things work. And it's really, really awesome. But what I'm seeing happen is there's a breakaway of a group of people who are digital natives, and but there are large sectors in this country where people are not being given the natural chance to become digital natives. So we need to find ways to make these opportunities more accessible to continue to develop the talent. I mean, and sort of tying these two threads together, it is my firm opinion that in the United States and probably in the rest of the world, with maybe one exception, the demand for our talents currently radically outstrips the supply. And while as individuals, that's a great position to be in, as a nation and as, you know, just across the human race, that's not a great position for us to be in. So we need to be finding ways to increase education opportunities for folks to either be participants here, whether that's as providers or as informed customers. That's my story.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Do you think that we'll start to see more of a balance of demand and supply? Is that what you're? Or are you just
No,
saying
no, I don't think so. I think that you know, when you look and you talk to people from different regions, access to so just about anybody can access Python. You need a laptop and an internet connection, and you need to know how to download it. However, not everyone is living in a place or in a culture that encourages that. And so, so we've got young people who are, getting out of high school in some places with tremendous advantages. I would say almost unassailable advantages in the sense that they're so far ahead and will continue to get so far ahead that they'll never be caught. And so I think that it's important that we find ways to not level load isn't right because that's pulling everybody towards the mean, but trying to push to the right. And that's a tough policy challenge, and it's not one that I'm going to try to take on here today, other than to identify it.
Got it. Okay, great. Excellent. I put the top 7 things that I had heard about the future in the chat. So if anybody wants to take a look at any of those, feel free to do so. Do we have any questions? I've been trying to monitor the chat for any questions that we can answer for you, or any commentary on anything that's been said so far. Your chance. All right. Any other final thoughts or pieces of advice from the panel on ways to break these silos? Like, if you could give one final piece of advice, what would you say?
So I guess one of the best books and advice that I'd ever got in breaking silos is seek to understand before being understood. And that's from Stephen Covey. Oh my gosh, I'm blinking on the title of the book.
7 Habits.
Harrison,
Yeah,
help me
7
out.
Habits.
I know you know this book. but I think that's really important. That kind of helps with building that empathy, right? Where, we want to understand our customers and our stakeholders first before trying to get them to understand what we bring to the table. And I think that's probably helped me the most, in most of my interactions with stakeholders.
Excellent. That's a great piece of advice for business and breaking silos, but in life, that's a great piece of advice. Thank you for sharing that one, Jen. Any other final piece of advice for breaking silos?
Bev, we have a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. I think someone is asking, why is there so much hype right now with AI? Where do you think the hype is coming from? I can give my thoughts, but I'd like to hear from y'all.
Okay, is it okay if I jump in? So again, this is back to the earlier comment about things that people feel like they need but are also afraid of. We have, from the 1960s, there was Colossus, the Forbin project. There was Knight Rider. There's Jarvis from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We have all of these longstanding ideas about what an AI can do. But I've seen the statistic, and it's reflected in my own practice. 85% of AI projects fail, and fail spectacularly, in the sense of, wow, that just totally didn't. So I think that the best thing that we can do to try to remove some of the hype around AI is to try to apply it more. All my computing environments are R. I like to use Keras as an AI tool, which rides on top of TensorFlow, which is executed in Python, and there's a whole semester of computer science right there for you. But it's the more you use it, the less magical it is, and the more it becomes just like the LM method for invoking a linear regression model. So I think that as we transition from people thinking that it's special and magical to thinking that it's just another tool in our tool kit, then then that's going to help us. And then I saw in the chat a question about the 85% number. That's anecdotal. I mean, I think I saw that in Gartner at one point, but I just talking with different folks that I've talked to, 85% failure rate is about what we expect over.
That's a very common percentage that gets used, and I'm pretty sure I've seen it in Gartner as well. But just the companies that I've worked with, only less than 20% of the work that we produce. And some of it is, to be fair, some of it's not meant to get operationalized immediately. It's meant to be a first step, and then you do more work before it gets operationalized. But still, that's a pretty common metric. Okay. I also put something in the chat about ANI versus AGI when it comes to AI, and that some of the hype from ANI is that it greatly increases our efficiency, or it could. Whereas other hype from AI is AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which can sometimes make people a little worried. You know, that they start appearing to think for them. The computers start appearing to think for themselves. So there's some of that fear. Going back to the piece of advice, final piece of advice, Harrison or EC, do you guys have anything that you wanted to give as a final piece of advice?
We talked about, you know, or I specifically talked about organizational resiliency and, you know, responsiveness for the upcoming disruptors and, you know, ecosystem dynamics, right? There's also an individual version of that, which is bringing more resiliency for your career path, right? So what I have seen working so far in the professional environments that I was in, people who are tending to be specialized in more than one area are likely to adapt to new environments and new conditions faster than the rest. You may have a major. You may be a data scientist, but why don't you, you know, think about picking a minor as well? Maybe in the industry that you are working in, or maybe in a specific function that you are working closely. For example, marketing. For example, supply chain. For example, manufacturing. And that way, you will be really irreplaceable. So let's say you're trying to build solutions in the manufacturing space, right? Maybe anomaly detection, maybe production planning, etc. And the patterns that the data scientist is looking for in the data really depends on how much domain understanding that data scientist has. So by reducing your need to an additional 2 or more SMEs, if you can also understand the domain itself and you know, maybe process engineering a little bit, maybe planning a little bit, and get the gist of these various domains coming together, where your solution would be really successful. So you need to know what will address your users' needs in advance before you touch the code, before you touch the data. I think that a major minor approach is working in so many people, and I would definitely recommend considering that.
Okay, and then 30-second last minute recommendation or final piece of advice, Harrison?
Absolutely, I can do this in 30 seconds. So nothing that's worth doing can be done alone. And when somebody starts out their career, they might think that the thing that they need to be doing is sitting in a dark room with piles of Mountain Dew, you know, writing code all the time. And that will work right up to the point that it doesn't. And so there's no such thing as being too collaborative. There's no such thing as having too many people you can call up to bounce problems off of. So I would encourage folks to get out of their offices, even if they're a remote employee, to metaphorically get out of their offices and talk to people and build connections. And Inform's membership and events is a great way to do that.
That's right. I love it. Thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you so much to our panel, Harrison, Jen, and EC, for talking to us about breaking down silos